Welcome or welcome back if you're a regular viewer of this channel, which I doubt you are because I haven't posted anything in over a year. But it's good to be back, and I'm back with good news because today, the 23rd of April 2022, is the day the Digital Services Act has been passed by the Council and the European Parliament. Um, well, it's not actually been passed, but all of the stupid bureaucratic terms, it's basically been passed. It's really close to becoming reality, and by 2024, it should be reality. Now you might have seen tid- tidbits of the entire act flick by on the news or your Twitter feed, but it's gonna be a really big act, and you should probably know a bit about it. The most articles I saw about this mostly consists of Google and other big tech companies being forced to add a reject all button, but it's really out of context. Like, what the fuck do they mean by reject all button? So, if you go onto a site like YouTube, Facebook, or Google for the first time, you will be faced with a prompt asking you if you want to be tracked and receive targeted ads by allowing a few tracking settings. So that's not new. But what is new is that there will be a reject all button, like I mentioned before. And this is groundbreaking, and it shouldn't really be groundbreaking, but in our current modern society, it is. Because back then, we didn't have a reject all button. Like, we were just poor peasants, because you couldn't reject it all in one click. You had to go and press customize and change every single option, reject every single tracking option, and then you could save those settings and continue browsing. Obviously, users will way more easily click an accept all button right now because it's way easier to just click that and go and change every single setting. But if we're going to add a reject all button, I hope at least a few lazy people will be convinced to click that instead of allowing themselves to be tracked. Um, I hope, I really hope, because it's one thing adding this button, it's another thing actually making people use this button. Because people genuinely care about their privacy, they usually already went into the settings and they disabled all of those tracking options, or they had extensions in place that would do that for them. But most lazy people, they don't give a shit about their privacy, they just want to browse the internet. But hopefully, at least some of them will still press that reject button eventually. The EU also said it should be more easy to unsubscribe than subscribe. Oh well, no, it should be as easy actually. Um, for certain services right now, that's not the case. Like, if you're automatically signed up into a mail list and you want to unsubscribe, sometimes it's a really shitty experience. Or if you just want to, deactivate your account, those little moments when you just want to unsubscribe or you want to deactivate an account and you accidentally press, oh yeah, I want to keep my account, instead of pressing I want to delete my account, because the colors are all switched up and you thought you were actually deleting your account. It's a bit hard to explain, but I hope you know what I mean. It's on purpose. They make one button look more like, your reflexes will tell you to click on that button because you think you're doing the action that you want to, but you're doing the exact opposite. Because these shitbags make it as annoying as they can to stop tracking, to let you stop tracking them or let you unsubscribe from the service. So I like to call these services I like to call these changes quality of life changes, because they don't per se add anything. They just make it easier to be less tracked and unsubscribe. They just make browsing the internet a bit more natural, like a bit more easier. But there's also a few other changes that this DSA brought into place. So big tech companies are gonna finally have to come forward and start explaining what their algorithms do, and how they use it to track their users, and how they use this data to send you ads and recommend you certain things. So that's also something really big I've seen on the act. It's been less talked about by mainstream media, but it's still something big, that should be mentioned. Because as, if you might already know, but some people don't, Facebook is not that big of a fan of transparency. We've seen it countless times. they don't like to be transparent, and I think it's pretty obvious why they don't want to be, because the moment, like, the general public realizes what the fuck they're doing with your data, they will start to boycott Facebook. This act will hopefully force them to change up a bit and start spilling the beans about how they've been spying on you for the past decade or so. Um, so this DSA, or well, Digital Services Act, I'm just gonna call it the DSA for the rest of the video, also implemented some like fine guidelines. So basically, how big tech companies will be fined, and the EU will be able to fine up to 6% of a company's global annual revenue for rule violations. So if, for example, Google breaks a privacy law that's set by the EU, they will be fined 6% of their global annual revenue, which doesn't sound like a lot. I mean, 6% is a small number, but for example, for Facebook, that would be a potential $7 billion fine. $7 billion, a company like Facebook or Google or Apple or whatever might be able to survive that, but it will certainly bring some problems to the table. Like, I think losing a few $1 billion is not something you want to do, even if you can, like, it's not something you want to happen, even if you will survive the blow. So there's also things called dark patterns, which push users towards a more specific Apple product. That sort of pattern spotting and pushing users is gonna be banned too. So dark patterns are officially no more, which is something again pretty big. Also stuff like tracking and sending targeted advertisements towards minors, while it was already mostly prohibited from what I know, is also like stressed upon and mentioned in the DSA. So that's also going to be completely banned if it already wasn't. Um, for the rest, there's also some pretty important points, like they're gonna ban advertising based on religion, sexuality, or ethnicity, and the EU will also force big tech companies to crack down more swiftly on hate speech. Um, for example, like we have already seen it, like them cracking down on hate speech, but this will probably also bring more problems to the table, because we're gonna have to start seeing what these apps classify as hate speech, and if they will follow the EU guidelines of hate speech, or if they're gonna come up with their own rules, because it's still a bit vague. The whole internet hate speech discussion. What is considered hate speech? How much free speech should an app have? So I'm a bit curious of how that will end up. I just hope that this act will bring a lot of good, and that this time the companies will actually be able to, well, they will have to, act. They will have to follow the act, and I hope this will actually bring some change, because this act can be revolutionary. I don't know how many times I already said act, but yeah, act. This is gonna be big, and I'll keep you updated about the situation. It should, like I mentioned before, go in effect somewhere around 2024. It's been like, this is not the first time I've seen a DSA pop up. Something like an early version of it was proposed in like 2019 or 2020, if I remember correctly, and it's been in the works for a long time, and eventually I hope this will be the eventual reality of like the online, space in the EU, as these companies will probably also be ending up, for convenience of their own sake, applying these, EU guidelines on their whole site, even for non-EU citizens, because that would be way more easy. But knowing Google and Facebook and all these big tech companies, I doubt that they will like voluntarily go ahead and do the same things in the US or Canada or any other country. Like, they will probably still steal as much of your data as possible. But I hope this act will prevent some of that. That was a video. So, like, subscribe if you like it, dislike if you dislike it, and I'm out.